Welcome back to Spells from the Shelf. I'm Ammie.
I'm Paul.
And we're here to talk about Six of Crows. Yes.
By Leigh Bardugo.
By Leigh Bardugo. Okay, so this was a Paulie pick, and he got me into the world because this is his favorite. This is your back into reading book.
It is my back into reading book, which made me think too, like we got to do a pod on yours as well. That was the Ash and
from Blood and Ash.
Yeah, Blood and Ash. We'll have to do that on a future pod. But we ended up on mine first just because.
Well, because it's completed.
It's completed.
Mine's not completed, and it's deep. It's like there's going to be 7 books from Blood and Ash. That's a commitment.
Yeah,
that's gonna be a next year commitment.
Oh man. Well, we could just start with series 1, right? Like for me, this one, I've told our pod audience before that I kind of pick books up on vibes, and for whatever reason, I had walked past the Bardugo books. The Grishaverse, the Shadow and Bone trilogy had already been out, and these were just coming out.
Oh, so you got these like right as they were
right as they were coming out, and
that's a big deal.
Just kind of grabbed at me, and I just fell in love with the stories. I think one, it was I had taken a long break from reading, right? Like I was an English major in college, and then I ended up running my own business for a while, and I wasn't reading anything except for like P&Ls and food stuff. P&Ls like profit and loss sheets, and
those are fun.
Yeah, not the funnest. So then I was like, oh my, and my head was breaking. It was really. I have a pretty good vignette about that too that I can maybe touch on later. Where my doctor told me it was stress. That was. Hives were breaking out of my body. And I was like, it's not stress.
Oh my God. Can I tell you I had a similar thing happen?
Did you?
I broke out in hives, and they didn't know why I was breaking out in hives. So they kept
it stress?
It was. And they kept trying to fix it. And I was like, am I dying? I thought I was not. I was concerned because they couldn't figure out what was wrong. And then I found out it was stress.
So for all of our bookish people, like if you need to pop the top on stress, pick yourself up a book.
Yeah,
get down on a book. That's certainly what happened to me. And
that's actually what got me I lately started trying to get back into reading. I really did during COVID.
Yeah.
Because I struggled more than, so my husband's way more introverted than me, and he was thriving. He was thriving in lockdown, and I was like a caged animal.
I am not thriving.
I was not thriving.
Man.
But yeah, so this is your back into reading book, which I think is a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And you reread them for this.
I did. This is my reread of the series. My wife often says, like, why are we holding on to all these books? Because I buy books more than I get them from the library. And then anybody that does that, as everybody on TikTok shows, like what happens when you get let loose in a place like Barnes and Noble or your local indie bookstore. You come back with piles of books, or Polycon, and you come back with piles of books.
Starts
to take up a lot of room.
Live on the shelves.
Yeah. I mean, they have to become part of your decorations.
Yeah.
Because
I think of them as pieces of art.
Yeah, I agree.
That's how I look at them. I mean, and look, I was like, wow, you got the sprayed edges.
Yeah, we got the sprayed edges, one of those first editions.
You were ahead of your time before the time.
Yeah, the look of the books was cool. And so usually when I say I pick up a book on vibes, it's, I think the way some people pick up a bottle of wine, you look at the cover.
Yeah.
Me, I'm reading like the first page and seeing if it like kind of hooks me on that first page. Is the first sentence a grabber? Or is even the first paragraph a grabber?
Okay, so that's how you. Okay.
And then I just got hooked. I just absolutely was hooked. The same way I was hooked with Air and Sabaa Tahir's writing. Like I just got ported into this Grishaverse that Bardugo has created.
It's definitely and like I had not read anything by Leigh Bardugo. I had watched the TV show. And I had no opinion about the TV show other than I was entertained. And that's because I did not read the books. But after reading Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, and I started Shadow and Bone also recently, like I read the first book of that trilogy, I can see why there was a lot of discourse around it. Because like the first season, I could see where they were trying to merge the worlds, like keep them separate, but have them like parallel to one another. Mm-hmm. And then season 2, I now realize was just, they just went way off the rails.
Yeah.
They were doing their own thing. So what these books are, so these books in particular, now you can read Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom without reading Shadow and Bone. You absolutely can. If you want to continue with her duology after this one, which is King of Scars, then you have to backtrack and read Shadow and Bone.
I would, yeah.
Or did you read King of Scars?
Of course, I've read everything Bardugo's written. But yeah, I mean, just to rewind a little bit.
I think that was a stupid question that I just asked. Yeah. But like, did you read
everything
King of Scars?
Bardugo writes?
I was like,
and The Rule of Wolves is the second book there. But I think what they did with the series, for anybody that's watched the series first, is they married the storylines that we're going to talk about here, the Six Crows and the Crooked Kingdom, and they married the plot line and storyline of the Shadow and Bone trilogy. And that's where it kind of just, I think it was hard to write. It was obviously recommended by the producers and the networks to do it that way. So I think Bardugo went along with that. You have expertise in creating TV shows and movies, then you're you leverage that expertise with somebody, but I don't think it particularly worked. They canceled it after the second season. So I encourage anybody that wasn't crazy about that TV series to definitely check out the books.
I would agree. As someone who watched the show first and then obviously just read them. Yeah, I would absolutely agree. Especially if you want some closure. Yeah. That you definitely just did not get.
Yep. And timeline wise, it starts with the Shadow and Bone trilogy, and then it's these books happening afterwards. But
right, that's what I can't remember the exact timeline, but yeah, it's after everything happens in Shadow and Bone.
Yeah, the Rafkin Civil War.
Yeah. So, do you want to do the summary since this is your book? We'll do a quick summary.
We'll do a quick summary. So you've got. We meet the Dregs. The Dregs are the gang led by Kaz Brekker and Per Haskell. And what's happening with the gangs is they're like any gang, criminal activities. These are pretty advanced gangs where it's not just your usual street thugs. They own property. They own gambling dens. They own pleasure houses. So basically any of the seedy underworld. That's really where they kind of have property, and it's the stave or the barrel, right?
Right.
And Ketterdam. Yeah. Ketterdam's your environment, your town, your city, and Ketterdam has nice areas and it has bad areas. And the Dregs and some other gangs run the pleasure houses and gambling dens in the barrel. The barrel's like the seedy area. So having these seedy characters and a super rich merchant class. One member of the Merchants Council approaches Kaz Brekker to do the undoable, right? To break into this ice court fort to retrieve a chemist who has created this drug, Jerdaparem.
Yes, which becomes a big. It's like the crux of the plot.
Yeah, and what Jerdaparem does is, as you get introduced into the world, fans of her book will know it as the Grishaverse. You have these magical creatures called the Grisha, and they have a certain hierarchical ranking, and they all have different powers. So some can command wind, some can command water, right? Like the Tide Makers. Some are called Heartrenders, and they can heal. Adjust your pulse and heal.
Yeah, which is cool.
Yeah, it's a fun magical system that she's got. It's not super complex, but you understand it as you read it. It's not a complex magical system to understand. It's it has the usual rules. They don't a lot of the times with magical systems, there's a quid pro quo every time you use the magic. You don't really see that so much where it's super draining.
No, yeah,
in fact, it's the opposite. It's the inverse. Every time a Grisha uses their power, they're enhanced, right?
Yes, that's right. That is very different than you typically see with magic in general in books. Is usually it's a price that you have to pay. But yeah, you don't get that with this one.
Yeah, which I thought worked. It's not like they're using limitless stores, right? I think a lot of the reasons there's that give and take is because you don't want to have a narrative trick where they could just use their power endlessly, right?
Right.
Then there's no conflict.
Right.
Then just magic wins.
Magic wins. Everybody else loses and magic wins. Yeah, no, I liked that. So you get like this band of characters, and it's interesting because I like multiple point of views. Paul likes lots of point of views, and I noticed this difference. Like, so I have to shift the way that I read a book when it has more than 3 point of views that it gives me.
Okay.
And so I listened to this, by the way, guys. So I listened to both Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom on Audible. They were on sale, so I picked them up. And that definitely made a difference in a way. I think it did kind of, part of it hindered a little bit with the first book for me because the narrator who did Jesper's voice was not interesting. And like, he just did his voice that I think was like in real life. So it was really hard for me to get into that. So every time his point of view came up, it almost felt like my brain just like disengaged from the story. So I think that's kind of what happened there. And what's fun is I loved Jasper's character on the TV show. So I was really excited. And I think that's where audiobooks do differ from reading, is if a narrator doesn't, and that's also a preference thing, right? Everybody has different preferences. And for me, it wasn't working for me. So I think it did hinder how I read Six of Crows, but I was used to his voice by Crooked Kingdom. So I was just rocking with it. I was like, that's his creative choice, and I'm just going to roll with it kind of deal.
Yeah. It's speaking of like the multiple, you get the different points of view. So where the book follows Kaz, Inej, who's also known as the Wraith. She's like a ninja. She is basically a ninja. She's crawling on walls. Yeah. She's listening. She's like conducting the espionage element, right? She's the spy element, which is what ninjas were for the samurai. So she's kind of picking up intelligence on the other gangs and keeps Kaz informed. And then you've got, I thought the opening was fun for Six of Crows because it set the stage. The character's juiced. He's never mentioned again. This is a one-off. Yeah, it's like, but what the first chapter is really effective at doing is showing how powerful Jirta Parem is, right? Like it sets the stage for the shift that you're going to go through as you read along, right?
Yeah.
And what happens in the first chapter, so spoiler if you haven't read it, but not much of a spoiler, it's really just setting the stage for how powerful the drug is. They're taking Grisha and experimenting on Grisha. And they use Jirta Parem, and the character just says, stop. The Grisha gets the Jirta Parem injection, and then she just says stop, and or wait, and they're just like stuck in stasis, and they can't move without. She's basically like rewired their brains.
It was an interesting like description.
It was a haunting first chapter, right?
It was. I was, so normally authors, it's very unusual for an author to do that in a first chapter. So, but it hooks you right away. Yeah. I will say that. I was immediately like, wait a second, this is
what just happened?
Yeah, I was like, wait. I was like, I had to go back and listen to it because I was like, hold on a second. That is definitely not how I expected. And also because I watched the show. So I was like, who is this character? Like, what is happening? I was very confused. And I was like, man, if this character is like really like going to be a thing every single chapter, then I can totally see why people did not enjoy.
Yeah.
But no, it's quite the opening.
Yeah, it's a good opening, and it kind of it's in one environment, and then the second chapter brings you right to the dregs, right? And the introduction of Kaz. And Kaz is, our morally gray anti-hero.
Very morally gray.
Absolutely savage. We've talked a lot about how I'm partial or biased towards the savage females, but Kaz is one of my all-time favorite characters written in fantasy literature. He's just, even if you don't like the books, you think they're overrated, or you're not crazy about Bardugo, like I feel like you really have to give some credit to the character of Kaz. The author just builds a great mythology around him.
Yeah, because here's what's fascinating about Kaz as a new reader to his character in these books, never have read him before, that the show just does not pick up and do it justice, is he can't walk as fast as the others, but he's this
got
very
a cane,
formidable force.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he has a cane. He has a little bit of like a gated walk, but he's very like formidable. People are scared of him.
Yeah, and for anybody that knows Bardugo, she walks around with a limp.
I did not know that.
Yeah, she carries a cane.
Oh
so there's a lot of her
this
in
is
the
like
Kaz character.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. I did not realize that. That's an interesting. And see, this is the thing. Authors do like, yes, it's obviously fiction, it's fantasy, but I do think it's interesting when authors leave pieces of themselves
In the characters, of course.
in a character, in a story. Yeah. I think that's actually kind of like a cool thing. I did not know that, but I liked Kaz's character. I did too.
Yeah, he's a lot of fun. I mean, he's absolutely cutthroat. Let's see.
I think my favorite characters. I think my favorite character was Nina. She was just always eating waffles.
She is great. Nina's the heart render.
She's so sarcastic. Yeah, so she's magical. She's the heart renderer, and she's just
Nina Zedek is
ridiculous.
An absolutely wonderful character.
Yeah.
And what's really fun about the way Bardugo pairs the two is she kind of pairs her personality with Matthias, who's very prudish.
Yes.
And she is the opposite of prudish.
Complete opposite. They're just complete opposites in all ways. He like hates her but doesn't hate her. She's just so like wants to be accepted by him. She does, and she's just constantly eating waffles. I think that was my favorite thing. She was just like always ordering waffles.
She's like, I'll do that for you, but we're gonna order waffles after, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Like she's like, but I get waffles, right? And I'm like, who is this chick?
It's really great.
Yeah, she was a good character. And then you have Jesper and Wylan. Wylan's character in the show was not.
Are you even going to talk about Matthias? I thought Matthias was one of your favorites.
Well, Matthias is one of my favorites, but listen, we're going to talk about it in Crooked Kingdom, okay? Me and Leigh Bardugo are going to have a talk. We're going to have a talk. No, Matthias, I liked that. Here's what's great about Matthias's character that you kind of see happen is he has a belief system that he grew up with from his society, what are they called again?
The Puritans.
The Puritans, thank you. And it's a very harsh society, and they're very they don't really like anybody other than other Puritans.
Yeah, it's Russia.
Yeah.
It's completely Russia. She borrows Russian imagery. They live in an ice kingdom. Like,
she did.
It's like Siberia.
Oh man, Bardugo.
And they're they're akin to wolves, and they use wolves as companions.
Oh, the wolf aspect. Well, I just got chills because the wolf aspect, like, when you first meet Matthias's character, he's trapped in a very harsh prison, and he's forced to fight the thing that his people are so like
regard as sacred.
Yeah, these are sacred to them, wolves. So that's a very important aspect of his character, but also I think out of both of them, and I'll discuss it more in Crooked Kingdom, is I think he had the most character development. I think him and Kaz had the most character development.
I think that's why what happened to him.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about it. I won't throw a spoiler out yet, but I think that's true. He did have some of the most character growth. And I love, as I've mentioned how Bardugo builds the mythology of Kaz Brekker, and she does it through all the characters, right? It's not just through watching Kaz, it's the other people and how they observe Kaz. And one of my favorite viewpoints is Matthias's view of Kaz. He says, Matthias listened silently to the strange words coming out of the pale, freakish boy's mouth. Matthias knew monsters, and one glance at Kaz Brekker had told him this was a creature who had spent too long in the dark. He brought something back with him when he'd crawled back into the light. And it's just like one of these chilling descriptions.
Very chilling.
How Matthias views him. And he calls him Demon. He calls Kaz Brekker Demon throughout the entire book.
He does, actually. Yeah.
It's amazing.
He does. And it's interesting because they're both alike in some ways because I feel like Matthias also has this like strange lore around him because the way that I imagine is like this very unusually strong character who is young like the rest of them because this is young adult and they're all like young characters, or I would say like what, like high teens, like 17, 16. But he seems like older because of all the stuff that he's been through. Which is also how Kaz's character comes across.
Very much.
They're like the adults babysitting the children.
Yeah. And Matthias is he's in Fjerda, which is like this, Russian simulacrum of this ice kingdom. But he's a Driscoll, right? And that just translates to like witch hunter in the Grishaverse, right? So
yes,
it's a nice like pairing again. Nina's kind of the witch. The Fjerdans view Grisha as abominations, and yeah, he's this witch hunter. So it's a very serious, like,
very serious.
It's that trope, right? It's when we talk about like tropes and archetypes, it's the witch hunter falling in love with the witch.
It is. It's very, yes. It's very like typical. And then you have Kaz, who's the morally gray character, and his opposition, and not opposition, but his like parallel would be Inej, who is, she believes in saints. She is what I would consider the hope and the faith of the group. So I would consider her like, she's what glues it almost kind of together.
Yeah.
Like Kaz thinks he glues it together, but
he glues plans together.
He glues plans together, but
you're right though. It's a great point.
As you see like the story go, you almost see him coming to terms with the fact that like Inej is such an important crux to their group.
Yeah.
Because without faith, what do you have?
Yeah. I think, and Kaz and Inej are a great pairing. The way we were just talking about Nina and Matthias, like Inej is definitely the light in Kaz Brekker's dark demon world,
Very much so. But she also does that with Jasper and Wylan too. She does this great, like, I did like that, how she paired but as she did it, it's almost like Jasper and Wylan were probably the most similar in a lot of ways compared to like Kaz and Inej and Nina and Matthias being so like different from one another. Yeah. It was less extreme with them.
Yeah, no, that's true. They were more like,
they were more alike. Yeah. And I liked that aspect of it. So she gave you kind of a very wide variety of people.
Yeah. And the way I agree, it's a wide variety of people, and the matchings and the pairings like you're talking about are kind of what like hooked me and make it really interesting. Like when we talked about Inej being the light, and like one of the chapters has a great quote from Kaz, where he says he trusted her with his life countless times. It felt much more frightening to trust her with his shame. And I think that was one of my favorite quotes from Kaz, because it showed, like, as we talk about characters changing, like Kaz might not change much in his criminal scheming throughout the story, because that's just who he is through and through. But being able to trust somebody with shame and vulnerabilities, like that's a foundational thing that doesn't, that happens over time. That's change, right? That's evolution.
That is change. And the thing to note with Kaz specifically in Six of Crows is he is not only a guarded individual in his mind, he's a guarded individual visibly. He is covered. He wears gloves. Like his guardedness seeps through every single part of him.
Yeah.
And you like visibly see it.
It's his nickname in the book, Dirty Hands. So
Dirty Hands. Yeah, that's right. Poor Kaz. Oh my God.
So I feel like you're starting to come around now. You're starting to
I'm starting to come around. So I did we decided when it comes to like trying to change rating. So I gave this a 3.5, Six of Crows specifically, not Crooked Kingdom. So separate from that. I gave this a 3.5. Obviously, this is Paul's favorite book. So
well, I'd say favorite duology.
Favorite duology. Yeah. Well, yeah. But he's trying to change my rating, which you know what? It's slowly like, and I told him, I think what happened was sometimes listening to something as opposed to reading it, it absolutely counts as reading. I'll always say that audiobooks count as reading, but you know, I was I was a little bored at first, and I was like, what's happened? And
that's set up, right? Like I'm with you. There were parts where, and especially if you read these books together, if the Crooked Kingdom moves a little bit faster, there can be some more action. There's a lot of setup and introduction to the characters. I like the character depth, but I do think, I could see where you'd feel like it went slow. And it's interesting that you thought that on an audiobook too, because I feel like audiobooks, when somebody's telling you a story. Yeah.
And maybe that's why I felt it a little bit more, is because maybe it was being told to me. Sometimes sometimes I do think that books are just meant to be listened to. I don't know if for me, Six of Crows meant to be listened to. Crooked Kingdom, obviously, I think because you start out with an important task, which we'll get to, but and this is what you always have to remember, guys, when you're reading the first book in any series, you have to expect that you're not going to get every single answer that you want, and it's not going to be always paced the way that you want, because the author has a whole plan in mind. She did, though. She had she set it up. Like, after I got to the end of it, I was like, wow, she set that up exactly how it was supposed to be set up, because you have the gathering of, so they have a task that they have to complete that's been given to Kaz, and a plan is set in motion, and Kaz loves his plans. And she really tells you that in the story. Like, I've never seen a planner before in my entire life for something like breaking and entering.
Yeah. And it's a heist, right? Like, I think everybody likes to talk about Brandon Sanderson and his magical heist stories. But this is a heist story, right? It's a jailbreak from the impenetrable ice court. So I think a heist, if you like heist and you like magical worlds, like, these are really great books to add to your list.
Yes, no, it is. And so the heist is that main thing that you're working towards in the story. And as you get closer to it, I noticed that there's more and more like excitement around it. And she writes the heist scenes extremely well. Yeah. Like, extremely well. It was fast paced. There was a lot going on. And this is where having this many point of views is important, because it's almost like you're viewing the entire situation from different angles, kind of like a movie. Yeah. And that's where multiple point of views, like especially in a heist situation, I think is so important, because you're getting to see what each character is doing. Like, what is their
at the same time?
Same time, like, what is their task? Are they accomplishing it correctly? Does it go off without a hitch? Of course not. Of course not. Not everything can be
we wouldn't have a good story.
Or we wouldn't have a good story, and you wouldn't have book 2. So it doesn't. But the heist was my favorite part.
Yeah. No, I'm with you there.
She wrote it so well. I was like, I normally have to listen to audiobooks while doing something. So like doing something around the house, walking, whatever. I was just sitting listening to it. Once we got to the heist part, I was just like sitting, staring into nothingness and just like hallucinating.
Watching the heist in my imagination.
Yeah, I was just watching the heist in my imagination. Thank goodness. So thank goodness my husband's a golfer, because he was golfing one night and I just like sat on the couch and just like listened to this heist, and it was good. Yeah,
it's a lot of fun, and I think she, to your point, she paints the picture really well, so that she talks about the ice court. From Nina's point of view, it's very clear to Nina, who's a Grisha, that this ice court was created by Grisha. It was created by magic, and you're inside the witch hunter's lair, and they hate the Grisha.
Hate them.
They think they're all witches and that their god thinks it's an abomination. So it's great where she starts to talk to Matthias. She's like, do you have any workers that could actually do this kind of work? Like, this is very clearly spellcraft.
Yes, and that was an interesting moment for Matthias's character, I think, because it's where I think you start to see a little bit of a change in him.
Yeah, where he starts to actually recognize those things. And Nina doesn't set out to really change his mind. She's just kind of angry at him initially.
Right.
But once she sits and it's her first time at the ice court, she's like, she's just having these discussions with Matthias. And I think, that surely there's probably some agenda there, but it's not like she set out to change his opinion. She just,
No.
she just kind of liked him. Like he's this big burly guy, barbarian type, right? Like,
right. Yeah.
barbarian witch hunter.
What I think was really good, and I'll say this before I do just a favorite quote of Nina and Matthias, is that open discord between them, like where they would just talk and both of them would just happen to be listening to the other one. Neither one of them knew. Like, so when Nina's talking to Matthias about these things, she doesn't know if he's actually absorbing the information or thinking about it in any type, because she's not trying to change his mind. And I think that's an important thing that you can take away into your real world.
Yeah.
That sometimes just talking to people about a different point of view than what theirs is could change something without you even realizing it. You could take off rose-colored glasses of somebody and not even know it.
Because the power of discussion, right?
Yeah, the power of discussion.
If you're going to enter into a conversation, you should be able to accept the fact that your mind might be changed. If you're walking into a conversation and with only one point of view and you've already made a decision not to add some other details or like counterpoint to your point of view, then
right.
You just stay kind of closed. And I think that's a lesson to take away from this book. Definitely to bring to the real world. And I wish it upon all of our listeners that we can all have an open perspective there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's what Nina and Matthias is. And maybe because like listening to them I loved that they were so different and that they were able to have open minds to one another. But just to kind of give you guys an idea of just how they are with their like banter back and forth, like Matthias says to her, it's not natural for women to fight. And Nina, my girl Nina, says it's not natural for someone to be as stupid as he is tall. And yet there you are. Like that's just Nina.
Oh my God. Their dialogue is like that throughout the entire book,
and the entire book. But what I loved about Nina is she's doing that, and then she's saying, like how much she's like has such a crush on it.
Yeah, would you pass me the book?
Yeah,
yeah, no, absolutely. They're.
Yeah, I stole his book.
It's pretty funny. Well, you read them all. I mean, you audiobooked them all.
I audiobooked them all, but I am gonna get shelf trophies. It's okay to get shelf trophies, guys.
Shelf trophies.
Yes, like a serial killer.
Oh man.
Serial killer of books.
Oh, so there's to just build on the scene where there's Nina and Matthias, and they end up sleeping together to keep each other warm.
Yeah,
right. They've gone through the water, freezing water, and they're having a conversation. And he's like, "Fjordan women are meant to be venerated, protected." And Nina agrees. She's like, "It's probably a wise policy," but it kind of goes on, and where's the quote? It's really funny.
They're so funny, these characters. I mean, Nina and Matthias definitely bring the humor into it. So does Jasper a little bit. Definitely.
Yeah. And then, so the quote I was looking for was, so they're sleeping next to each other and he hates it, right? He's like we said, he's kind of prudish. And Nina goes, right, I can feel just how much you hate sleeping next to me. I feel it every morning.
She's so savage.
He blushes. Yeah, she's absolutely a joy to read.
She really was like, absolutely. They were my favorite. They were. But you know what? I'm going to bump it up a little bit.
Let's go.
I'm going to end on 3.75. You're probably like, what? So stupid. I mean, it is a little stupid. 3.75. Yeah. Because I did like the whole setup for this world. And then I immediately went right into Crooked Kingdom.
Yeah.
Because the end was so like, what? That was crazy. It's so good. I definitely, you guys should give these books a try. And it's a duology. So you can't go wrong there with a duology.
Yeah, I recommend these books to a lot of people. And I've never had anybody say, come back and say like, it really wasn't for me. There's plenty of takeaways. There's lots of humor. It's just, it's great escapism. It
is great escape. It is top tier escapism at its finest. And it kind of adds like that little magical element that you have with Nina into the heist aspect, and each one of these characters gives something to the story that's like 100% needed.
Yeah. So I was 4.5 on this one. But yeah, so always going to give Bardugo a high score. I wasn't as crazy about, like, she's got a few books out that aren't the Grishaverse, Hellbent and Ninth House.
Okay, so that's not part of the Grishaverse.
Not part of the Grishaverse,
okay.
and not as much YA, and I think largely YA young adult can be kind of more marketing genre, than actual, like, it's just magical fantasy or fiction or like coming of age is what I feel like it used to be called. But
I know I
dating myself there as a coming of age story. Like, but I think, and I wasn't as crazy about those, and part of that might have just been like I really like being in the Grishaverse, but those stories didn't hook me as much. But people also love the heck out of those.
Okay, that's good to know. Is it magical at all in any nature? It is
magical. So they take place in a college scenario. So kind of thinking
a college scenario. Okay.
Oathbound and Tracy Dion's books. It is a college setting.
Okay.
And the different frat houses, like if you've, Yale, it takes place in Yale, New Haven, Connecticut. And there's all these old magical houses in Yale. Really, like, the Skulls was like the one George W. Bush was in, right? So, so she takes those houses, those frat houses or clubs, and each one of them has a specialty in an area of magic. And the story kind of sets.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's a cool setting.
Okay.
And they're fun stories.
Okay, so maybe for spooky season.
Spooky season.
Maybe I'll read those for spooky season. We have something in mind for spooky season too.
We do. I mean, we could probably do multiple spooky sessions.
Oh yeah. So many spooky. It would be very on brand for Spells from the Shelf.
Yes, 100%.
Very on brand for spooky season. But no, this was good. And there's more to come when we discuss Crooked Kingdom in the next episode.
Part 2.
Yeah. No. Right. So thanks for joining us, guys.
Follow us on Instagram, TikTok.
Yes, we're everywhere.
Pod on it. All major platforms,
especially Apple Podcasts. Apple Podcasts is like the big one.
Oh, is that where we're getting most of our hits?
Yeah. So feel free, guys. And also feel free to let us know what you think. If there's anything specific that, if you have a question about something, we do a lot of recommendations on our Instagram page, because there's just not enough time to record, life be lifing. We can't record every single book that we read, but don't worry. There's tons of books that you can choose from in all different areas of fantasy. And so feel free to follow, subscribe, and
catch you next time
for Crooked Kingdom.